On the morning of the 14th of March, the corner of Vane Street was empty, and the Duke of Cranleigh stood in front of it for a full minute like a man who had walked into a wall in the dark. There was the railing. There was the worn place on the third step of the chapel where she set the basket. There was nobody at all. Adrian had come down that street at 8 o'clock every weekday morning for 2 years and 1 month. He was aware that this was known and remarked upon. His club found it eccentric that a duke should walk when he kept 11 horses, and his secretary had long ago given up suggesting the carriage. What nobody knew, because he had never told a living soul, was why the route never varied. It did not vary because it went past the place where his brother had died. Frederick had come out of a chop house in Vane Street on a wet October evening and been struck down by a bolting dray, and had lain on the stones for 3/4 of an hour before he died, and Adrian had been in Northamptonshire and had not known of it for 2 days. That was the whole of it. There was no lesson in it and no comfort, and no one to be angry with. And Adrian, who was 38 and had been duke for 11 years, and had buried a father, a mother, and now a brother, had discovered that the only thing he could do about it was to walk past the spot every morning at 8, so that his brother should not have died in a street that nobody attended to. The flower seller had appeared at that corner 4 months after the funeral. She sat on the chapel step with a shallow basket, and she mended lace for the milliners in Cheap Row while she waited for custom, and she had a bad shoulder that she favored in cold weather. Her name was Hesper Quill. He had learnt it in the first fortnight from the chapel beadle. She sold nosegays at a penny and buttonholes at 2pence, and she had a way of biting the thread that he could have identified in a crowd of 1,000 women. "Good morning, sir," she had said on the first day. "Not your grace, not my lord. The county said your grace and wanted a living. His trustees said your grace and wanted a signature. Every woman at every dinner in London for 11 years had said your grace and wanted the rest of it." "Good morning," Adrian had said. He had bought a buttonhole. He had bought one the following day, and the day after that, and by the end of the first year he had bought upward of 300, and by the 14th of March he had bought, by his own estimate, something over 640. Violets in the spring, pinks in June. In February, when there was nothing, small tight bunches of whatever the market had, and once, in a hard frost, 3 sprigs of rosemary, for which she had refused to take the 2pence and had been unable to explain why. He knew the following things about her: that she had a sister in service at Tunbridge, that she read, because he had twice seen a book in the basket under the moss, that she gave away her unsold flowers at 4 o'clock rather than let them wilt for tomorrow's profit, and that on the anniversary of his brother's death, both years, there had been a small bunch of white flowers laid at the foot of the railing, and she had said nothing about it, and neither had he. He had never spoken more than 9 words to her in a morning. He had counted, on occasion, which was not the habit of a sane man. And on the 14th of March, the corner was empty. Adrian stood there in the wind with his hat in his hand, and then did something he had not done in 11 years, which was to abandon an appointment. He went up the chapel steps and found the beadle. "Miss Quill," he said, "the flower seller." The beadle, who had never been addressed by a duke and made rather a business of it, said that she had not been there yesterday neither, your grace, nor the day before, and that there was a deal of fever in Copping's Yard where she lodged, and that a woman had been carried out of it Tuesday on a shutter to the parish infirmary in Bell Lane, and he could not say for certain, but he did believe it was her, on account of the basket being left on the stairs. "Which infirmary?" "Bell Lane, your grace. It is not a place for a gentleman." Adrian was at Bell Lane in 20 minutes. It was not a place for anybody. It was a long, low room with 2 rows of beds and a smell that he did not afterwards forget, and a single overworked apothecary's assistant, and a matron who wanted his name 3 times before she believed it. He walked the whole length of the room before he found her, in the 11th bed from the door, and if he had not known the shape of her hands he might have gone past. The fever had had her a week. Her hair had been cut off. That was the thing that went into him hardest, the shorn head on the bolster, because it was done to save trouble in nursing, and it meant they had not expected her to want it. "Miss Quill," he said, and got down on his knees on the boards beside the bed, because there was no chair. Her eyes came open. It took a long time for them to arrive at him. "You will be late, sir," Hesper said. Adrian put his hand over his mouth for a moment. Then he said, "I am late. I have been standing at your corner since 8 o'clock like a fool. Where are your flowers?" "There was none this week." Her voice was a scrape. "I had no money for market Monday. I was going to tell you I should be there Thursday, but you had gone past before I got the words up, and then I could not get up at all." Her hand moved on the blanket. "Sir, there is a thing in my pocket, in the gown. They have put it under the bed." He found the gown, folded on the floor, and put his hand in the pocket, and drew out a small object wrapped in a scrap of lace and tied with thread. A gold signet ring, broken across the shank, as a ring is broken when a wheel has gone over the hand wearing it. The crest was his own. Adrian sat back on his heels on the floor of a parish infirmary in Bell Lane, and could not, for some while, do anything at all. "You were there," he said. "I was going home along Vane Street with the last of the basket, and the dray come round out of the yard too quick." Hesper's eyes had filled, and the tears went sideways into the bolster. "There was 3 of us stopped. The others went for help. I stayed and held his head up out of the wet so he could breathe easier, and I said the Lord's Prayer with him because he asked for it, and he said a name 3 times. Adrian, 3 times. And then he give me the ring off his own hand. He pushed it at me, sir. He would not have it left in the street, and he said, 'Give it my brother,' and I said I would. That was 2 years and 5 months ago." "I know how long it was," she said. "Then why," Adrian said, "in 640 mornings did you never once give it to me?" Hesper Quill turned her shorn head on the bolster and looked at the ceiling of the parish infirmary. "Because I am a flower seller in a gown with 3 patches in it," she said, "and you are the Duke of Cranleigh, and I had a dead gentleman's gold ring in my pocket. There was a reward cried in the paper for information, £50. £50, sir. I never went near it. Do you know what they'd have made of a woman like me coming to a duke's house with a broken ring and a story and no witness, when there was £50 hanging on it? I'd have been in the House of Correction by Michaelmas." Her breath went thin and she waited for it, and after a while it was not that any more. "What was it?" "It was that you came every morning." She said it to the ceiling. "For months after you started walking down, same hour, and I worked out for myself what you were walking past, because nobody walks a street like that unless it's got something in it. And I thought, if I give him the ring, he'll know that I was the one what held his brother, and he'll know I heard him say his name, and then he cannot ever walk down Vane Street again, can he? Not past me. Not once he knows I've got that in my head." Her hand had made a fist on the blanket. "So I kept the ring in my pocket, and I sold you a buttonhole, and I let you have your mourning. 2 years. It was the only thing I had to give a man like you, sir, a corner where nobody knew nothing about him." The matron came down the ward, and looked at the Duke of Cranleigh kneeling on her floorboards, and went away again without speaking. "Miss Quill," Adrian said, his voice had gone entirely. "The white flowers at the railing, both Octobers." "The 29th, she said. "I'd not have you think nobody marked the day but you." He got up. He stood over that bed with a broken ring in his fist and the whole architecture of 2 years rearranging itself, and he understood, with a completeness that took the strength out of his legs, that he had not been walking past a stranger every morning for 2 years. He had been walking past the last person on earth who had touched his brother alive. She had known it every single day. She had sat on a cold step with a bad shoulder and kept it to herself, so that he might have 9 words and a buttonhole and no pity in them. "You are not staying here," he said. "I have nowhere else." "You are coming to Cranleigh House." "I am not," said Hesper Quill. He was so unaccustomed to being refused that it took him a moment to hear it. "Sir, look at me," she said it steadily. "A duke carries a flower girl out of a fever ward and puts her in his own house. There is not one person in London who will believe there is anything decent in that, and I shall be the one they say it about, and I shall have to live in it after. I have my name. It is the whole of what I own." Adrian stood very still. "Then we shall do it the other way," he said. "Mrs. Barbrook, my housekeeper, was my nurse before she was my housekeeper, and she is the most respectable and the most disagreeable woman in England. She will come here herself within the hour, and she will take you to lodgings of her own choosing, and she will nurse you there, and she will sleep in the room, and if you are not satisfied with the arrangement you may tell her so and she will tell me. I will pay, and I will not come. I will not come, Miss Quill, until you send for me. If you never send for me, then it is a debt I owe your name, and I shall pay it and be silent." Hesper Quill closed her eyes. "You do that." "I have 640 buttonholes to answer for," Adrian said. "It is the smallest possible beginning." Mrs. Barbrook came within the hour, was ferocious about the state of the ward, and had her patient in clean lodgings in Farrier Row by evening. The Duke of Cranleigh did not go there. He sent nothing but what was asked for, which was chiefly beef tea, coal, and a book. He walked down Vane Street every morning at 8 past an empty corner, and up again at 4, and told nobody why he was suddenly so difficult to live with. On the 2nd of April a note came to Cranleigh House. It was written in a slow, careful, self-taught hand, and it said, "I am up. Mrs. B says I may sit at the window. You may come Thursday if it suits. H. Quill." He was there at 8 on Thursday morning, with a buttonhole he had bought from a boy in the market, having discovered that he had no idea how to buy flowers. She was in a chair at the window with a shawl round her shoulders and her hair growing in short and dark, and curling at her temples, which he had never seen because she had always worn a cap. There was lace in her lap, and a needle. Mrs. Barbrook sat in the corner and knitted and did not go out, and was not asked to. "Your Grace," Hesper said. "Sir," Adrian said. "It was always sir. Do not promote me now." She laughed, and it turned into a cough, and Mrs. Barbrook glared at both of them. He came every Thursday, and then every Thursday and Sunday, and in May, when she was strong enough to walk out, he came at 8 on weekday mornings, and they walked, with Mrs. Barbrook 3 paces behind them like a small, furious frigate, up Vane Street, and past the chapel step, and out into the green square at the top where the plane trees were coming into leaf. They talked about the price of moss, and the character of milliners, and the book, which was a bad novel about a Venetian, of which she had a low opinion. In June she asked him about Frederick, properly, for the first time, what he had been like when he was a boy, what he had laughed at, and Adrian talked for an hour and a half in the middle of the square, and afterwards found that something set hard in him for 2 years had come unset. In July, at the top of Vane Street, he stopped and said, "Miss Quill, I have a thing to say, and I have made a bad job of it in my head about 40 times, so you must take it as it comes." "That sounds ill," Hesper said. "You told me in the infirmary that your name is the whole of what you own. I have thought about that sentence every day since March. He turned his hat over in his hands. I am going to offer you mine, not as a kindness. I would not insult you with a kindness. You would not have the £50 and you would not come to my house, and I have understood since April that you are the proudest person of my acquaintance, and I include the Archbishop. He made himself look at her. I have loved you for 2 years, and I did not know it until the morning the corner was empty, and I have been walking down that street to sit with the dead, when the whole time the one person alive who could reach me was sitting on the 3rd step with a basket. Marry me. Every gossip in London will say precisely what you said they would say. I cannot prevent it. What I can do is put it in writing, before witnesses, that the woman who is to be Duchess of Cranleigh knelt in the wet in Vane Street, and held my brother's head up out of the water, and gave away £50 to keep his name out of the papers. And let anybody in England call that a scandal to my face. Hesper Quill stood in the sun under the plane tree with her mended lace in her hand, and she did not say yes for a long moment. They will be very unkind, she said, for years. For years, Adrian agreed. And then they will be bored, and then you will be the Duchess who founded something they all want their names on, and they will pretend to have known all along. I cannot dance. Neither can I. It has been remarked upon in 3 counties. Adrian, said Hesper, and it was the first time, and he felt it go through him like the church bell going off overhead. Yes, yes, and put it in writing and read it out at the wedding breakfast, and I shall stand up while you do it. He did read it out. He read it out to 200 people in the great room at Cranleigh House in October, on the 29th, which was the date they chose deliberately, and his wife stood beside him with her hand in his, and did not look down once. The broken signet ring hung afterwards in a small glazed case in the front hall of Cranleigh House, where every caller passing in had to walk by it, next to a shallow flower basket with a worn handle that no one was ever permitted to move. And every morning of their lives together, at 8 o'clock, the Duke and Duchess of Cranleigh walked down Vane Street arm in arm, past the 3rd step of the chapel, and at the railing she stopped, and he waited always, without a word. And on the 29th of every October there were white flowers there before either of them arrived, because the chapel beadle had made it his own business, and would not be paid for it, and once told a curious stranger that it was for a young gentleman who died in the street, and that a duke and a flower girl had both been keeping the day for years before either of them found out about the other.